Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to do my top 25 time travel movies. But I have to put a disclaimer at the front of this video because I know people are going to give me, you said this movie was better than that movie in this other video. Look, yes, some movies are better than other movies in different contexts. In the context of a summer blockbuster or in the context of a sci-fi action adventure movie, some of these movies are going to rate higher than others. But in the context of a time travel movie, they get rearranged differently because some of them work. Some of these movies, all of these movies have time travel elements or as a theme, but some of them do it better than others. Or as a time travel movie, some of these movies work better than others. So there might be movies high on this list as a time travel movie. I'm like, yeah, that's a good time travel movie. But as a comedy or as a movie in general, yeah, I'm not a fan of that movie as a movie. I'm just like, look, as a time travel movie, it's the best. But as a movie, as a film, yeah, not so much. So I want to put that out there before people come with the actually. Thank you very much. To that end, number 25 is Army of Darkness. Now, Army of Darkness is a movie I enjoy, especially as a pseudo medieval themed fantasy horror movie. I like it in that context. And as a time travel movie, it works for me because, yeah, he starts in the 80s and goes back in time to, I'm just going to say medieval times, and then comes back to the 80s at the end of the movie. So it works good for me. Number 24 is The Time Machine, the original. Um, the reason why I rate this one at number 24, it's a good time travel movie, but it has the worst time travel logic because it's all based on he he only invents the time machine because his woman was murdered or killed or whatever. And so every time he goes back in time, he tries to save her life, but he can't because his motivation for creating the time machine in the first place was her death. So I'm not a fan of that time loop, which we're going to get to in another time travel movie. I don't like time loop movies where the movie is based upon something that had to happen but couldn't happen without the time travel because it's convoluted and it irritates me. Number 23 is Idiocracy. This movie only makes the list because it's scary as fuck because we're living in it right now. And it's not really a time travel movie in the sense that there's a time machine. It's more like Futurama, where he goes to sleep and then wakes up in the future, but it still counts. But as far as the movie goes, I'm not a fan of it. I understand the premise. I know people like it, but I look at it and I'm like, uh, no, that's the fucking MAGAs, and I'm not here for that because they scare me. Number 22 is Back to the Future Part 2. This is another example of a movie I don't enjoy, and I don't consider it a good movie. But as a time travel movie, it works. But again, it loosely works based on, again, the premise is everything is a time loop. It only happens because it has to happen because it already happened. Which, I'm not always a fan of. Now, as far as the trilogy goes, Back to the Future 2, in my opinion, is the worst one, and definitely not the greatest. But I do like the fact that they go to the future in that movie from the perspective of 1985 or 87, I think, when it was made, somewhere in that ballpark. But we're already, the future presented in that movie is already our current past. And it's just hilarious to see how they got the future wrong. But it is what it is. Number 21 is Time Cop. Now, this is one I kind of enjoy as a sci fi thriller, but it's not a great movie. But it works as a decent time travel movie because you have it's Time Cop. It's a cop who travels in time to, um, I guess, kind of like what's it called? Um, Quantum Leap, where he's trying to correct things that went wrong in the past or something like that. Again, it doesn't really make a lot of sense, but it's an interesting premise and I enjoy it for what it is. Number 20 is Frequency. Now, this one is loosely a time travel movie. I consider it a time travel movie in that you have a guy at the time the movie was made present talking to somebody in the past who's already dead in the present but alive in the past, and they're getting to communicate with one another through time travel. That's the only explanation. So in that context, I enjoy Frequency. Um, it's just a little heavy for a movie for me. I'm not a fan of, heavy movies. But this one works for me. Number 19 is Millennium, which is a sci-fi, I'm going to say sci-fi B thriller? Question mark? Mystery? Question mark? I don't know. Millennium is convoluted as all hell, but it's fun because the time travel element is sort of central to the movie, but it's also another one of those, well, it happened because it had to happen because we went back in time and made it happen. Because we had to, because whatever. So convoluted, but it works. Number 18 is the Philadelphia Experiment. This one is another one like Millennium. It's a thrill. It's more of a thriller than it's definitely not a comedy. But what I like about this one is it plays with your expectations of a time travel movie. It's kind of like, if we could go back in time and do this, should we or could we? So it's kind of interesting, but it's not a fun movie to watch. Number 17 is Star Trek 2009, just simply titled Star Trek. This movie uses time travel in a way I actually enjoy. It uses it as a way to create a new alternate timeline for the Star Trek universe, which allows them to kind of sort of disregard the decades of convoluted continuity so they can pick and choose the parts they like and create something new and fresh. I also like this movie as a sci-fi action movie because it's got like good action. And as a Star Trek movie, it's one of the better ones. It's one of the ones I like. Number 16 is Sphere. Again, this is a darker movie, um, very heavy, um, more of a thriller or horror movie, um, in a way. The time travel element is kind of, you know, again, it's a circle. It's, well, we have to do this thing because if we don't, then the thing that happened in the past that made us do the thing we're about to do wouldn't have happened, but we wouldn't be here if we hadn't done the thing to do the, you know what I mean? It's circular, it's convoluted, but this one works for me because it's revealed slowly and you're still trying to figure out what the fuck is going on. And it's very intense and it's very suspenseful, and I actually do enjoy that. Number 15 is Rise of the Machines, Terminator 3. Now, again, this list is going to be confusing because um, Terminator 3 is my favorite of the original trilogy. So as a movie, I enjoy it more than the other Terminators. But spoilers, some of them are higher on this list because they work for me better as time travel movies. But this one works good here at this slot because you still have the machines coming back in time to, change the future, but you're not getting tied up in the convoluted, I have to send my dad back in the past so he can get my mom pregnant so I can be born, so I can send my dad back in the past so he can get my mom pregnant so I can be born. It's not as convoluted as that, but it still works because it's a fun movie. Number 14 is Terminator 2 Judgment Day. I like this one as the time travel aspect of this movie a little better than Rise of the Machines. Because one, we get to see a lot more of the future in this movie than we do in Rise of the Machines. And Rise of the Machines has that kind of heavy-handed, there's nothing you can do, the future is written message. Whereas Terminator 2 has more of a, hey, let's, there's no fate but what we make. Let's just change the future as best we can with the knowledge we have and see how we. Why did you do that, you stupid cat? You idiot. Anyways, I think it works as a good movie, and it's a good action sci-fi crime thriller. Number 13 is Austin Powers Goldmember. Now, Austin Powers has a weird relationship with time travel. Again, it's more of a cryo freeze than a time travel. But this one actually does have a time machine, and he does go back in time to, fix the past, kind of. Now, as a movie, it fucking sucks. It's a stupid movie. But as a time travel movie, it does it well enough. Not as good as others, but, better than some. Because at least the time travel aspect makes sense logically in this movie, whereas it doesn't really make sense in some of the movies lower on this list. As much sense. Number 12 is The Final Countdown. Similar to the Philadelphia Experiment, but in my opinion, a better movie. You have a military, U.S. military, naval force that goes back in time just before Pearl Harbor, and they've got 1980s U.S. military equipment with the up against the 1940s Japanese military. So the moral dilemma is, hey, we could stop World War II from even happening. Well, not really, because it's already started, but the U.S. involvement. But the moral dilemma is, but if we do that and we change the past, we won't exist, because the reason we have all this modern equipment is because of the aftermath of World War II. So it's kind of like, if we interfere, what happens to us, kind of thing. And I think that's pretty cool. Number 11 is X-Men Days of Future Past. Not the best X-Men movie, but probably the best one that handles time travel. Not necessarily the only one to handle time travel, but the most overtly. Now, Days of Future Past does blend the first class cast, the new cast, with the older cast in a really good way. And I enjoy this movie. It's very intense. It's very good action, very good sci-fi, very good drama. This is a good movie, and I highly recommend it. Number 10 is my absolute favorite Star Trek movie of all time, First Contact. I think First Contact is another example of a good time travel movie, because here you have the Borg going back in time to when the Federation didn't have the technological capability to be a nuisance, but at the same time, you have the Federation starship people going back in time to stop the Borg with old technology, but they also have to do it in a way that is like, oh, but we also have to make sure the thing that happened in history still happens, even though the Borg came back in time to stop it from happening, to stop us from existing. So that's kind of fun, and it's not too convoluted because it isn't a time loop. It's just a, hey, if we don't fix the mistake that the Borg made, we won't exist. And that works a little better for me than the whole, time loop thing. Plus, it's a damn good movie. Number 9 is Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. Now, this one I like because they do a lot of going into the future in this movie, more than they do in the first one. They spend more time in the past in the first one. Uh, and they spend a little time in the future, but most of it's in the present or in the past. I like this one because it does take place a lot in the present, but also in the afterlife, because, this is the one where they die and essentially go to hell and have to trick the devil into letting them back to Earth, which is kind of fun. Number 8 is the Time Machine remake. I actually like this one a lot more than the original. It's basically the same premise. It has the same fault the first one has, but I think they deal with it better in this one, and I like the future stuff in this one better than I do the original. I think that they looked at the original and said, "All right, that was good for the time, but we can do this better," and I think they did. Number 7 is Avengers Endgame. Now, this is another one where if this was a different list, this would probably be at the top of the list for the type of movie it is. But as a time travel movie, this one's pretty high on the list, as you can tell. It's, um, number 7. But I really like Endgame because it handles time travel differently than literally every other time travel movie. Even calling out other time travel movies is bullshit. And they give us a whole new, more plausible or believable within the context of the MCU explanation for how time travel can work, and also why the time travel rules from other time travel movies don't work in the MCU because, they just don't. Number 6 is The Terminator. Now, I know I've harped on this movie for having the time loop, which I do not like the time loop in this movie because it's a major plot hole that really irritates me. But I also like this one better than the others because, because we don't see that much of the future. You got the time travel aspect, but very similar to K-Pax, you have a movie where you could argue watching this movie that none of it happened, that it's all Kyle Reese making shit up. And even though it's not, and we do have as the audience proof of the time travel, nobody else does. And it's a good thriller, which I really want from a time travel movie. It's really interesting as a movie. Number 5 is Back to the Future Part 3. Now, what I like about this one is they go to the Old West, which you don't do in a lot of time travel movies. Most time travel movies either go to the distant future and make up their own rules, or they go to some period in the past and they try to correct something that happened in the past. They try to stop Genghis Khan or Hitler or whatever, you know, or they just happen to be a part of history inadvertently. Like, oops, we're here, and then I guess we're gonna cause the thing that happened. So again, funky time loop. But no, that's not what happens in Back to the Future 3. It's just like, hey, let's go back to the Old West because why not? Sounds fun, and it is fun. Number 4 is not my favorite Star Trek movie, but I think it's the best time travel Star Trek movie. It's Star Trek 4: The Voyage Home. One of the reasons I like this one is because they actually have to explain how time travel works, and there is a possibility they could screw up. In the previous mentioned Star Trek movies, they're just like, oh, open up a warp drive, let's go. This one, they're like, no, we have to do a bunch of fancy sci fi mumbo jumbo calculations, math. You just got to take our word for it. But we have an explanation for how it works, even though you just got to basically take our word for it. But what I like about it is it takes Star Trek, which is set in a made up fictional future that will never happen, no matter how hard Star Trek nerds and NASA scientists want it to happen, it won't. Uh, but it puts them in the present at the time, which is now the past in the 1980s when it was made, and it shows us that hey, you know, um, the ideals of Star Trek don't really work in the real world, and that is kind of earth shattering to Star Trek nerds who don't realize Star Trek could never happen, no matter how badly you want it to happen. Number 3 is the original Austin Powers. Again, as a time travel movie, this one is dubious because, it's more of a cryo freeze. But I like this one because it's hilarious. Him putting a CD on the record player, you know, the whole bit about the um what we'll just say the body modification tool he uses. The whole thing with the fembots. This is just a fun movie. I enjoy it a lot. It's the only good Austin Powers movie. I will say that. Number two, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. This movie is a thrill ride, a mile a minute. It's just nonstop hilarity from the word go, and it's just awesome. Which takes us to number one, by far the greatest time travel movie. Probably not the greatest movie on this list, but still worthy in its own right. It's Back to the Future. You knew, based on the movies I've already talked about, it was going to be Back to the Future. Come on. The other two made the list. Do you think the other two were going to make the list and not the classic, the OG, the original? To me, this is the playbook for how you do a time travel movie. You don't fuck with the timeline. You don't change history. You don't go into the future and make shit up that could never happen, but you're just like, whatever, let's just pretend. No, you just like, hey, let's go back in time and have some fun in the 50s because why not? You know, the logic of the movie doesn't really work, but you just kind of shrug it off and go with it anyways. Sure, why not? It's fun. It's a fun fucking movie, and I love it. I love Back to the Future. I just can't watch it anymore because I saw it a bajillion times as a kid on TBS because it was on literally every day after school on TBS, and I've seen it too many times. But I still love it. It's an awesome movie, and I don't know, maybe 10 years from now I'll go back and watch it again when I've got some distance between me and it because I've seen it too many times. But I still love it, and it's still, in my opinion, the greatest time travel movie of all time. And nothing's ever going to top it unless they can actually remake it in a believable way, which, I'd like to see them remake it because then we can go back to the 80s, and I think that would be fun. Um, but I just don't know if they're going to do it right if they do remake it. So I would rather they don't remake it, even though I kind of want them to. I don't have faith in them to do it. So there you go.